Hey Trailblazers, patch 1.2 just came out, and with the new patch, we also get a new tier list from Prydwen. So let's take a look at what's been changed. If you're not familiar with Prydwen, Prydwen is one of the top English-speaking theory crafting communities. So when they put out a tier list, their opinions are very well respected within the community. With patch 1.2, we have a new character, Blade. And Blade immediately went into S tier. There's also quite a lot of other changes. When Blade went to S tier, he basically moved down everyone else. Everyone else that was previously in S tier got moved down to A tier, including Yuan. And consequently, a lot of the damage dealers in A tier got moved down to B tier. So this includes Dan, Himiko, Hook, Serval, and Sushang. And unfortunately for Arlen got demoted from B tier to C tier. Another change is Japard got demoted from S plus to S. Most of the tier list changes are pretty reasonable, and it makes sense. But there are a few changes that could be considered controversial, so let's talk about them. The first potentially controversial change is actually not a change. Jinche remains in A tier, while all the other previous A tier damage dealers got moved down to B. So why did Jinche stay in A? My belief is that Quantum Weakness is very valuable right now, and that's what gives her the edge and allows her to stay in A tier. Japard got moved from S plus to S. A lot of people love Japard. The reason that Japard got moved down to S tier is that Luocha came out, and Luocha is standalone the best healer in the game. I think what Prydwen is trying to do here is try to create a separation between the best of the best and the very good. And so that's why Japard got moved down. He's very good, but he's not at the top anymore. And the last controversial change is probably the most controversial, is Jing Yuan moving down to A tier. There's a lot of Jing Yuan fans in the community, and he puts out big damage numbers, so you would think that he still deserves to stay in S. So why is he not in S anymore? You can see from Blade and Jing Yuan's character cards that Blade is essentially one tier above Jing Yuan in everything, in single target and in AOE situations. So that's why from Prydwen's point of view, it makes sense to move Jing Yuan down to A tier. So then the question is, why does Prydwen think that Blade is a tier above Jing Yuan? And the answer to this lies in the damage numbers. The theory crafters in Prydwen have a very complex and detailed damage simulation spreadsheet. For Prydwen's damage simulation of Blade, they actually have to simulate enemies attacking Blade. Blade's talent triggers a follow-up attack after 5 stacks, and one of the ways to gain those stacks is through being attacked by enemies. In Prydwen's Blade damage simulation, they have Blade getting attacked once per action. Whenever Blade uses a basic attack, there's a hypothetical enemy who attacked him before he used that action. So each time he uses a basic, the simulation gives him 2 stacks of his talent. This in effect stacks his talent pretty fast. Whether you believe getting hit once per action is conservative, accurate, or optimistic, I'll let you decide. But this is the scenario that they chose to use. Additionally, in their damage simulation, the gear of the character matters too. So for Blade, they have him using the Inert Salsado Planar Ornament set. The bonus of this set increases the damage of Blade's talent. So in Prydwen's damage simulation of Blade, they're putting heavy emphasis on the damage that comes from Blade's talent. In a single target scenario, the simulated damage numbers are actually very close. You would think that based on these numbers, Jing Yuan and Blade are in the same single target damage tier. But if you remember from what I showed you earlier, Blade was an S while Jing Yuan was an A. I'll explain why later. In the AOE damage simulation, the gap between Blade's damage numbers and Jing Yuan's damage numbers increases by a lot. Jing Yuan is simulated at 20% less damage than Blade. If you look at the damage breakdown of Blade, you can see that a lot of that AOE damage comes from his talent. In Prydwen's damage simulation of Blade, they heavily optimized for Blade's talent damage. This is what I believe is the root cause of the huge gap between Blade and Jing Yuan's damage numbers. When you look at this comparison, it's very easy to see why Prydwen came to the conclusion that Blade's AOE damage was S+, and Jing Yuan's AOE damage is just S. Another important detail of Prydwen's damage simulation is that the character acts alone, which means there's no support characters buffing the damage numbers of Jing Yuan or Blade. However, in the real world scenario, there are going to be supports that increase the damage of carries, and this is how Blade pulls ahead. The real MVP of Blade's damage is Bronya. Because Blade is a carry that doesn't use many skill points, Bronya can afford to use her skill on Blade every single turn. She can easily double the damage of Blade. There's no support for Jing Yuan that has that kind of scaling. Bronya is probably the reason why Prydwen put Blade's single target damage at S and Jing Yuan at A. Additionally, Jing Yuan is limited by his Lightning Lord mechanic. Lightning Lord's damage potential is capped at a certain point. Unfortunately, it's this reliance on Lightning Lord that holds Jing Yuan back. So what do I think about all of this? How do I feel about Prydwen's assessment? Overall, I agree with Prydwen. Blade is the undisputed king of damage per skill point. Nobody else in the game does more damage with so few skill points being used. However, Yuan being demoted to A tier does not mean he's useless. In fact, he's still very useful. If you're facing in an AOE situation where the enemies are weak to lightning, you would still choose Yuan over Blade. Also, it's easier to build a hypercarry team around Yuan than it is around Blade. Blade has a very specific requirement of Bronya, whereas for Yuan, you can use 4-star supports like Tinyun and Asta. And lastly, I just want to express my concern about potential power creep in the game. We're only 2 months into this game, and you can make an argument that power creep has already happened. I know that power creep is inevitable in turn-based strategy games, but I did not expect it to come so quick. We have Kafka coming out after Blade, and Kafka is also a AOE damage dealer. Kafka is also lightning. If Kafka's numbers turn out to be higher than Yuan's numbers, where does that put Yuan? So these are my thoughts on Prydwen's new 1.2 tier list, and I hope I was able to help break it down for you. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.